For the second consecutive year, the Texas Longhorns are going to have double-digit players drafted in the NFL draft. They've got a lot to replace. They're going to need some guys to step up. Who is the most important Texas Longhorn not named Arch Manning in 2025? We'll discuss on today's edition of the BK Show. What's up, guys and gals? Welcome in to another edition of the BK Show right here on YouTube. I'm your host, BK Brad Kellner, and this is your one-stop shop for Texas Longhorns content on YouTube. Please like this video. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Just over 2 weeks of the BK Show. We're already nearing 900 subscribers. Can't thank y'all enough for the early love and support. Excited to grow this thing with you people. Yeah, I said it. You people talking Texas Longhorn content all year round. And I want to hear from you. Comment below with your thoughts. The most important Texas Longhorn not named Arch Manning for the 2025 season. I think we can all agree that Arch is the most important player for Texas next year. You need good quarterback play to be successful in this sport. If Arch isn't who we think he is, then I'm not sure these other guys are going to matter all that much. There can't be a huge drop-off in quarterback play from Quinn Ewers to Arch Manning. And I think a lot of Longhorn Nation is optimistic that Arch can be even better than Quinn next season. Hopefully that's the case. Look, I'm a Quinn guy. I mean no disrespect to Quinn when I say that. But if Arch can be even better than Quinn in his first year as the Longhorn starter, then I think Texas is going to be in very good shape. If there's some major drop-off in quarterback play, then it's going to be a struggle for Texas, and they're going to have a tough time getting back to where they got this season. So, Arch Manning, look, the quarterback's the most important player for any football team. Arch Manning, no exception for the 2025 Horns. Now, who's the most important non-quarterback for Texas next season? I've got 5 candidates. I'm going to give my answer at the very end, but here are the 5 guys that I think could be the right answer to that question. If I'm forgetting somebody, let me know. But we'll start with number 1, C.J. Baxter. C.J. Baxter. A quarterback's best friend is a good running game, and Texas needs a more consistent run game in 2025. Now, you could say Quintravion Wisner, who ran for over 1,000 yards this past season. You could pick Jarrett Gibson, who showed us a lot as a true freshman in Steve Sarkisian's offense. Maybe one of those guys ends up being RB1 next year. But I think the plan, the best case scenario for everybody inside those walls at Moncrief is for C.J. Baxter to be this team's starting running back in 2025. Remember, as a true freshman, C.J. Baxter beat out Jonathan Brooks as this team's lead running back going into 2023. Now, probably not the right decision. We saw how good John Brooks turned out to be last year, but that just tells you what this coaching staff thought of C.J. Baxter going into his first game of his collegiate career. Obviously, he was supposed to be the guy this season before he tore his ACL in fall camp. And the Texas running game just wasn't good enough this year. It wasn't consistent enough this year. There were some great games. The A&M game, the Clemson game, those two come to mind. You could throw Kentucky in there as well. I mean, Texas had some dominant performances on the ground, but they weren't consistently good enough over the course of the season. And when the Longhorns played the best defenses they played, you think of the 2 Georgia games and you think of the semifinal loss to Ohio State, the run game just wasn't reliable enough. And I get some of that falls on the offensive line, but I also don't think Texas had a true difference maker in the backfield this year. Jaden Blue was kind of supposed to be that guy once C.J. Baxter got hurt. Unfortunately, the fumbleitis got the best of Jaden Blue, so we didn't see him play to his full potential this year. And Trey Wisner was awesome. He was huge for Texas, but I mean, look at some of the other running backs that Texas has had. You can go all the way back to the beginning of time, but just look in the last 10 years. I mean, Jonathan Brooks, first running back drafted last year. Bijan Robinson, first running back drafted a couple of years ago. Roshan Johnson, an NFL running back. Hell, Deontay Foreman, even when Texas was going 5-7 with Charlie Strong at the helm, the Longhorns still had one of the best running backs in the country. Deontay won the Doak Walker Award that year. He was the best running back in the country. Texas didn't have a guy like that. They didn't have a true dude. I think C.J. Baxter has the best chance to be that difference maker in the backfield of anybody on the roster in 2025. Once again, maybe Jarrett Gibson turns into that. Maybe one of the 2 freshmen that Texas brought in can turn into that. Maybe Christian Clark, coming off of his Achilles injury, can be that guy. But C.J. Baxter, the 5-star, coming out of high school, 6'1", 218, he's got to prove that he could stay healthy because he's missed games in both seasons. Obviously, missed the entire 2024 season. He's got to prove that he could stay healthy. But if he's what he is supposed to be, and if he's what this coaching staff believes he can be, then yeah, he can be a difference maker for Texas. And again, quarterback's best friend, a good run game. You could take a lot of pressure off of your first year starting QB if you've got a consistent, reliable ground game. I think CJ Baxter is the most important piece for that. Number two, another offensive player, Trevor Goosby at left tackle. He's got the arduous task of replacing Kelvin Banks, who's going to be a top 10, maybe a top 5 pick when we get to April. That guy was a stalwart on the left side of the Texas offensive line for 3 years. I mean, we could do a whole video talking about how good Kelvin Banks was and how much he meant to Texas football during his 3 years in Austin. Shout out Mario Cristobal for taking the Miami job, because Cristobal stays at Oregon. Kelvin Banks never comes to Austin. Thank God we got Kelvin Banks in burnt orange. So not an easy job replacing a top 10 pick. And obviously the whole offensive line needs to be good for the Longhorns to compete for a national title next year. But the guy protecting Arch Manning's blind side, yeah, ask Sandra Bullock, ask Tim McGraw. Those two owe Michael Orr some money. I'm not forgetting about that. The blind side, the left tackle, very important. Trevor Goosby looked great down the stretch. Like what he did in College Station when Kelvin Banks got hurt in the first quarter of that game was incredible. Incredible. Trevor Goosby as a redshirt freshman making his first career, I know it wasn't a start, but basically making his first career start, was the second highest graded offensive lineman in the SEC for that A&M game. He was awesome. He was solid in the SEC title game against Georgia. He played right tackle for Cam Williams in the Peach Bowl, did fine against Arizona State. Look, Trevor Goosby could be playing for a contract next year because it'll be his third year in Austin. If he puts it all together and looks as good as he looked in that A&M game, then he could be a first-round pick in the 2026 NFL draft. He's a beast. He showed us a lot down the stretch, and it's a big year for him, and he's really, really important. Once again, the whole Texas offensive line has to be good. Even though they were a Joe Moore Award finalist, I think they could be more consistent in 2025. But the left tackle, because of the importance of that position with the right-handed quarterback, yeah, Trevor Goosby, number 2 for me. Number 3 on the list of most important Texas football players not named Arch Manning in 2025, we got our first defensive player, Anthony Hill. He's the best player on the defense. He's been better than advertised through his first 2 seasons in Austin. No returning player on this Texas defense has played more snaps over the last 2 years than Ant Hill. And think about who you're losing. Jahdae Barron, Vernon Broughton, Alfred Collins, Andrew Makuba, Barron Sorrell. Talent, leadership out the wazoo with those 5 guys. You're going to need Ant Hill's talent and his leadership to step up. I believe that it will. Led the team in tackles this past season, led the team in forced fumbles this past season, 3rd on the team in sacks. And you've got some questions around him. You got questions with the interior defensive line because you lose Collins and Broughton and a couple of other guys, and we'll get to that a little bit later. So you're going to need Ant Hill and that second level of that defense to show up and show out. I know Michael Taft's the guy we're all excited about coming back for one more year. He's important too, but Ant Hill's the green dot wearer. He's the captain of that defense. That guy basically never leaves the field. I hope he's a Butkus Award winner, at least a Butkus Award finalist. I think he's got a shot to be in that conversation for the best linebacker in the sport in 2025. He's another guy who could go pro after next season. That's the hope, right? As much as I love Anthony Hill, would love to have him for 2 more years. You hope he continues to do what he's doing and maybe takes another step. If that's the case, speaking of first-round picks, he could be a first-round pick. That's number 3. Number 4, Ryan Wingo. He might be wide receiver 1. Maybe DeAndre Moore. We don't know. Those are really the only 2 guys with returning experience in that wide receiver room, because obviously you're losing Matthew Golden, Isaiah Bond, and Silas Bolden. So you're going to need some of the lesser proven guys to step up. I'm going with Ryan Wingo. And I think Ryan Wingo has some chemistry with Arch Manning already, because DeAndre Moore was a starter, meaning he was working with the ones, meaning he was working with Quinn. Ryan Wingo obviously played a lot in his first season in Austin, but more of a backup, worked with the 2s, which of course is where Arch Manning was most of the time in practice. Wingo's the 5-star too. DeAndre Moore's been a great story, took a big step in his second season, but Ryan Wingo was the guy. He's in the same class as Jeremiah Smith and Ryan Williams. The whole world saw what those 2 dudes did in their freshman seasons. Ryan Wingo was good. not as great as we wanted. I think some of that's on the coaching staff. He just didn't get as many snaps as those other guys that I just mentioned. But Ryan Wingo is supposed to be the guy. That was such a huge recruiting win from Texas to get him from Missouri, an out-of-state kid, to convince him at the very end to come to Austin. He's got to be really good for Texas. Talk about quarterback's best friend. The run game is that, but you need reliable weapons on the outside. If Ryan Wingo is the guy he's cracked up to be, that's going to make life a heck of a lot easier for Arch Manning and the entirety of this Texas offense. We'll see if the Horns go portaling after spring ball. But right now, Ryan Wingo, if he's not the number one, he's the number two. But I think the upside for him is higher than the upside for maybe any other player that Texas has at wide receiver right now. I don't know if you'll see the dog behind me. I'm dog sitting this week. So the doggo's walking around. Don't get too distracted, although she's a lot better looking than I am. All right, and number 5, most important players not named Arch Manning for the success of the 2025 Texas Longhorns. I'm cheating here, guys. I'm doing a 2-for-1. I've got Cole Brevard and Travis Shaw, the 2 transfer portal additions at defensive tackle. Texas is losing its top 4 snap getters at defensive tackle. They're all out of college eligibility, so they're off to the league. That's Collins, Broughton, Bill Norton, and Jermaine Lole. And Texas is also losing 4 defensive tackles to the portal. I guess they already have lost 4 defensive tackles to the portal. So the Longhorns incredibly thin at DT. They might add another player or 2 from the transfer portal just to have enough bodies in that interior defensive line room. But as it stands right now, look, we'll see what Alex January is. Obviously, Texas has 3 early enrollees, headlined by Justice Terry, the 5-star top 10 player in the nation from out of Georgia. I don't know if you can rely on freshman early enrollees to get significant snaps for you. If they're dudes, they'll get their opportunities, but that's a scary proposition when you've got games at Ohio State and at Georgia on the 2025 slate. You'd like to have experienced talent. Cole Brevard, Travis Shaw, they're that. Now, can they be close to what Vernon Broughton and Alfred Collins were for Texas? We were all nervous about what the D tackle spot would look like once Byron Murphy and Tavondre Sweat went pro. Those guys were amazing. The best 2 DTs in football in 2023. Lose both of them. All a little nervous how Texas was going to replace them. Collins and Broughton, they were fine. But the difference with Collins and Broughton and what you have this year, well, Collins and Broughton were going into their 4th years at Texas. They knew the defense. They had played a lot at Texas in their first 3 years. Like, you kind of knew what you were getting for them. Now, both of them stepped up and were better than they had been at all in their Texas careers, but you at least sort of knew what you had with those guys. I haven't seen it from Cole Brevard and Travis Shaw in Austin. Now, Cole Brevard has played more than 1,000 snaps. Yeah, he's played more than one snap too, of course. More than 1,000 snaps of Division I college football. He was at Purdue for the last 3 years. Yeah, Purdue sucks, but it's Big Ten football. He went up against some good offensive linemen and played pretty well. 6'3", 333. Travis Shaw, 6'5", 330. This guy was a top 20 prospect in America coming out of high school in the class of 2022. Played more than 600 snaps for Mack Brown at North Carolina in his last 3 seasons at Chapel Hill. Can those guys be close to Collins, Broughton, Norton, and Jermaine Lole? Think about it. Texas had 5 goal line stands in the last 5 games. The interior D-line, a huge part of that. Texas is going to need that interior defensive line to not take a big step back if they want to get back to where they were in 2025. That's obviously to an SEC championship, and that's obviously to the Final Four of the college football playoff. So another big year for Kenny Baker. He passed every test in year 1 with flying colors. He's got an even harder job going into his 2nd season in Austin. We'll see if Texas adds more from the portal. But again, the Brevard-Shaw combination, those guys have to be great. Have to be great for Texas to be great in 2025. So those are my choices. 5 to 6 guys, depending on, I'm cheating with that 5th one, putting 2 names right there. But I want to hear from y'all. Who do you think is the most important non-quarterback for Texas in 2025? My answer is going to be C.J. Baxter. I know he was the first guy I talked about. I know I brought up 6 names. I'm going to go with C.J. Baxter because I think if Texas has a more consistent running game this season, the Longhorns are playing in this national championship game tonight. And I think that's a big part of why they're not. So I'll go with Baxter as my choice. but I want to hear from y'all the most important player not named Manning for the success of the 2025 Texas Longhorns. That's going to do it for this video. If you made it this far, thank you very much. Don't forget to hit this with the thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Please spread the word about what we've got going on the BK Show as well. Once again, this is your one-stop shop for all things Texas Longhorns content on YouTube. Appreciate y'all tuning in. Remember, when you watch the BK Show, you rule. See y'all tomorrow. Hook 'em.